I'm Mike Vardy.
Meal planning is important because it prevents us from being a disappointed wreck when dinner time comes around and we have no clue what to make, or even if we have the ingredients to make the meal. It's a time and a money saver, but most importantly, it frees up valuable brain space. Creating a meal plan prepares us for the week to come and gives us peace of mind that we're organized and can feed ourselves and our family. That's why I do it, and that's why Plan to Eat helps me do it. Your subscription includes access to the Plan to Eat website and fully featured mobile apps on iOS and Android. And Plan to Eat gives you the tools to clip and organize recipes from any website, the ones your family loves and that fit your dietary preferences and needs. And you can create a meal plan around your schedule. Then what happens is the Plan to Eat software automatically creates an organized shopping list based on your plan. So sign up for your free trial at plantoeat.com/timecrafting. That's plantoeat.com/timecrafting. The coupon will be automatically applied to your account and can be used when you're ready to subscribe. It's valid for new customers only. Give Plan to Eat a try today.
And this is the Productivityist podcast. Another week, another podcast, another Productivityist podcast. It's me, Mike Vardy, the founder of Productivityist, productivity strategist, author, writer, and host of the show. And I'm glad you've joined me this week because I have Laura McClellan with me. She is the host of the podcast, The Productive Woman. She's a lawyer. She's the mother of 5 children who have, yes, they've moved on. They're older now, but to raise 5 kids, be a lawyer, be an author, be a productivity fanatic. I wanted to talk to her to find out how she got it all done and her thoughts on productivity and maybe the gender differences and how we each treat productivity differently between men and women. This is a suggestion that I had at the kind of the meetup that I had at the World Domination Summit. Is it was suggested to have more women on the show, and it's not something that I was not even thinking about avoiding. It's just something that hadn't really come up. So. We've started to, we did some, instantly as soon as someone suggested that at the meetup, I got on Slack and I said, hey, I asked my assistant if she could put together a list. And many of those names I recognize, of course, and just it puts it in one place so I can start to reach out. So you're going to hear more women on the show, and what better way to start off than with the productive woman? And you'll hear why she doesn't like to be called that in this episode. So here you go. The Productivityist podcast, my discussion with Laura McClellan, and I'll be back after to talk to you a little bit about what content you might be able to get if you're a Patreon supporter, because there was some stuff that we talked about that you're not going to get to hear on this edition, but the stuff that's here is fantastic, and let's not have you wait any longer for it. Here we go. Laura McClellan, the productive woman. You're the only woman I need to have on the show, I think, at this point.
Is that it?
That's it.
That's the horrible thing about me naming my show that, and there's a funny story about where that name came from, but I am not the productive woman. I just host a show that's called The Productive Woman.
So let's talk a little bit about, well, first off, let's talk about how we kind of got to know each other, basically over queso, right? Is it queso or queso? How do you pronounce it?
Queso.
Queso. So we were at Podcast Movement, which I've podcasted before about, and Eric Fisher and yourself and me, we hosted a productivity enthusiast meetup, much like what I did in Portland. And we had, 30 people show up?
Yeah, it was a great crowd. I was really surprised because we didn't announce it very far before the event.
And we were competing against a whole bunch of other people that were getting into town at the same time that were more podcast centric as opposed to like what we talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got to sit down and chat, and I told you about my love for bourbon, and you told me about a bourbon you had, and I knew as soon as you were like, is this one it? I'm like, oh yes, Woodford's very good. But I wanted to get you on the show to talk a little bit about what you just said, like the productive woman. What I've found is that, and this came up during the previous meetup I had, is one of the ladies that appeared on the show said, you haven't had a woman on yet. And I'm like, yeah, oh, you're right, I haven't. And it's not because there's no one out there there's no women out there that aren't productive. Clearly you interview productive women, but it's in the space that I've traveled, I haven't come across as many that are as into it in terms of what I talk about and write about as I am. Is that something that like how does that work in terms of was I missing something, or was it just like when you talk to your guests, like where are you, like how are you connecting with them so that you can kind of say, okay, you're the type of person I want to have on my show?
Well, it's a little bit different, I guess, for me, because when I look for guests for my show, and I generally only have guests maybe once a month or so, I'm not necessarily looking for experts on productivity. I'm looking for women in various stages of life, various walks of life, various professions, various areas of focus for them, who are willing to talk about how they manage their life. Because my show is, The Productive Woman is, not surprisingly, a podcast about productivity for busy women. And it's not structured as a show where I am the expert on productivity and let me tell you how to live your life. It's more of I'm a fellow traveler. We're all busy. We're all trying to find ways to get things done that we want to get done and make a life that matters. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the things. I talk about the things that I'm trying to figure out, and I find women just that I meet in various areas of my life, and invite them to be on the show when it seems like a good fit. But I agree with you, and maybe with your other guests. There aren't a lot of women podcasting about productivity specifically, I don't think.
There are a few writers. Like, it was funny, as soon as, and this is again walking the walk, as soon as she said this, and I said, well, you're right, and I went into Slack and I recorded something for my assistant and said, can you find a bunch of women that I should interview, because I know there are some out there. I rhymed off a few immediately when she told me that, and there's a whole list, like Laura Vanderkam and Gina Trapani, who I've talked to before. But she's kind of, she used to be the editor of Lifehacker, and now she's doing other stuff. I think she's still working with the ThinkUp. And then your name was one of the ones that came up, probably because you have really good Google search and you do a great podcast. So that worked out really well. But yeah, I think that I think that maybe, and this is one of the things that I wanted to have you on the show for, is do you find that there's a different way that kind of men and women obviously you're married. It doesn't, obviously I know that. Not everyone here knows that, but I know that. How do you find that there's a different way that men and women operate when it comes to tackling productivity? Because we've chatted, I'm sure you've chatted with a bunch of other guys about this stuff, and then you talk with women about it. Like, do you find that there's any kind of common thread as to how each kind of gender approaches this kind of thing?
Well, I think the principles of productivity are the same regardless of gender or age or anything else. I think maybe women, and I hate stereotyping, because anytime you make a blanket statement, somebody's going to come up with the exception, or, well, this person isn't that way. But I think in general, women tend to experience it differently, productivity or life in general. And that is, I think we take it a little more personally than men do. It's scientific isn't the word I want.
More holistic than say tactical?
Yeah.
Would that be a way to put it?
Yeah, and I think what I'm finding, my show has definitely morphed over the year I've been doing it, and as has my thinking about what productivity means. But the more women I talk to, the more I'm finding that a lot of women feel like they're not doing it right. And I'm not sure men care whether they're doing it right.
That's a great point, because I think a lot of what I find, and I'm sure you've heard me talk with people about this before, is that they just get this idea of just let's do it and then it's done, as opposed to doing it in a way that can create real progress and real quality. It's just about checking off boxes as opposed to checking off the right boxes.
Yeah, that, and I think there's a stronger sense of confidence that among a lot of men, that whatever way I've figured out to do it, this works. This is right. This is good. This works for me. Whereas women, at least a lot of the women I'm talking to, are kind of feeling like, well, maybe I should have done it a different way. Maybe a different way would be better. And whatever it is I'm doing right now, I should be doing something else. And I don't see as many men sort of taking that, internalizing it that way, of that sense of I should be doing it differently. I should be doing it better. I should be, I'm doing it wrong.
Right.
Whatever it is. Women, and again, it's not all of us, but it seems like a lot, feel like when I'm working, I'm thinking about my kids. When I'm with my kids, I'm thinking about work. And men seem to be able to compartmentalize those things a little bit better and feel okay about whichever thing they're focusing on at the moment.
What is some of the best, obviously, as we talked about earlier, you don't necessarily go on and offer expertise or whatever. You obviously chime in and say, here's some of the strategies I've done. And some in your solo episodes, like making space to think and those kind of ones, you're offering your thoughts on that. But what are some of the things that you've taken from some of your guests that you're like, oh, I got to try that?
Oh, there's some... One of the things recently that really resonated with me was something Izabela Russell said on the conversation I had with her. And we kind of talked a lot about trying to manage very busy businesses. And she's got multiple ones because she's, she runs a business with her husband, but then she's also launched this big New Media Europe conference that's coming up. And they have very small children in their home. This may not resonate with you, but it did with me. It was to give yourself, she called them little treats. And for her, it was like when things are going crazy, make time to go for a walk or to, I think it was acupuncture she's kind of into, and schedule a session for that. And that it's okay to schedule those things in even when life is incredibly busy, because those things keep us healthy mentally and physically and everything else. So that I thought was really valuable for me to hear as a professional woman who's got lots going on. And I've heard from listeners that they really valued that. Another guest that's been on in the last couple of months was Allison Sheridan, who she talked a lot about owning your choices. And so these are different kinds of things than maybe you focus on in the systems and the methods that you talk about. But these are things that seem to really resonate with women. And what Allison was talking about is knowing the difference between saying, well, I have to go to work today, and saying, I'm choosing to go to work. Even though maybe it wasn't what I wanted to do, I do have a choice about the things that I'm doing. And so just knowing that this really is my choice, and I can choose, I can choose otherwise, and there will be consequences, but it is still my choice. So though, surprisingly, when I launched the show, I really thought we were going to always be talking about kind of nuts and bolts and to-do lists and those kinds of things. We seem to veer off more into those more conceptual kinds of things, and that's where I get the most feedback from listeners.
What's interesting is as we're talking about this, what I've noticed in my years of studying this stuff is that you need to combine the practical and the tactical. And a lot of people they try to do one or the other, so for example, you and I talked about GTD and such at the, I think we were talking to somebody who was at the table, and we went into our mode. We did. And Eric joined in, we all kind of went in, and that was perfect form for that. But I think one of the things that I discovered in kind of studying all these approaches and methods is that a really good productivity approach or method or system has the ability to be personalized. It has the ability for somebody to say, okay, this is what I get out of, the Covey matrix, and this is what I get out of GTD, and this is what I get out of the 12-week year, and this is what I get out of the Now Year method, and let me combine these and make these so that I can take those things and choose, make clear choices and considered choices, as opposed to just having this checklist and going purely down the list because if you don't personalize this process, man or woman, then you're not going to get the results you want, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that was, what I was saying a minute ago about my my thinking about what productivity is has changed over the course of the year of doing this show and having to think about these things in a different way than I have in the past, because I've really come to believe that productivity isn't, and I've heard you say something similar to this, it's not about getting more stuff done, it's about getting the right stuff done. And to me, productive woman isn't the one who checks the most stuff off her to-do list or gathers the most awards for all the stuff she's done. It's the woman who's able to order her life in such a way as to maximize the positive impact she has on the world around her, whatever that means to her. And I think that's true for everybody. And that's kind of what you say about not... what's that you say? Stop doing productivity and start being productive, or
stop doing productive and start being productive.
Yeah, and that was something you said a while back. The first time I heard you say that, that was one of the things that started triggering that thinking to me about, all right, what does it mean to be productive? And you're right. We've got to, whatever tools we use, whatever system we grab onto, it's got to be personalized and adapted to our own circumstances, because everybody's life is a little bit different.
So now that we've gotten into that, what are the tools you use, Laura, to stay productive?
I was thinking about that this morning as I was at the office. It's because I'm such a geek about stuff in general, about tools and technologies, and I could waste so much time trying new apps and new task managers. The sort of soft tools that I have used as a task manager, OmniFocus, for the last several years, and I like a lot of things about it. But it had a couple of and I'm still using it. I've veered off of it a little bit, have tried something else because, well, for two reasons. OmniFocus is very robust and it's kind of complex, and that's both an advantage and a disadvantage, because there's a steep learning curve, I think. Mm-hmm. But one of the weaknesses for me personally is that it's an Apple app. Yeah. And at my day job as a lawyer, I'm given a Windows-based PC and Outlook and said, here's your world. And I can't get at my to-do list, my project manager. I can't get at OmniFocus unless I want to have my iPad sitting there, which I did.
All you can do is send it stuff.
Yeah, which is great, but I like to be able to look at it. And so I've tried a couple of different things. Several people, I think you and I talked about this at the meetup, that several people had recommended Nozbe. Mm-hmm. And so I tried that out, and I've kind of taken to using that for work, because for all the fans of, if there are any that listen to you of Microsoft, I hate the Outlook to-do list.
Well, it's just it's a checklist at best.
And it's useless to me. And so I have been using Nozbe for my day job stuff, my projects there, because I can have it on the screen. And I'm awful. I have 3 screens on my desk at the office. People walk by to look at my cockpit there. But I use that, and I'm finding that pretty useful, because I can get at my work tasks wherever I am, whether I'm in the office or not. But the rest of my life is still in Outlook. Although you make a great case for Todoist. The only reason I'm not really, I have it on my phone and on my computer, but I'm trying not to get sidetracked, go down another rabbit trail.
Well, Nozbe's got great Evernote integration too, right? I just talked about it with IQtel shutting down, which is like a lot of people have them up in arms. And it's funny, I mentioned that IQtel shutting down. I offered my 3 suggestions, and people were like, you missed the boat. There's emails in there, and you can't, IQtel integrating email is a blessing. I'm like, yeah, but it can be a curse, because you don't get that separation from these inputs that are coming at you, because email, that's somebody else's agenda. That's not your agenda. So having email separated, and the other reason, and I think IQtel was a noble effort. Apparently, they're still trying to keep it going. Is that trying to do 8 things really well is difficult, if not impossible. I would much rather have an application that does 2 or 3 things really, really well, or one thing exceptionally well, and just have a nice workflow and this is one of the things I talked about in the post about how to use multiple task managers. I mean, I'm sure in OmniFocus, you've probably got some stuff there that's work related. So you've just got a context you would call Nozbe. You're like, okay, I got to be a Nozbe to do this thing, right? Or something like that. That would kind of resonate with you so it triggers you to go to the right place. But people don't, I don't think people up front spend the time to set up that framework or those triggers, because they think it's just going to be a waste of time, but they don't realize how much time it can save them in the long run, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I agree with you about the idea of having email integrated with, having it. It's part of the problem for me with Outlook, the way it works on the machines at the office, because it is all integrated, the Outlook email and the task manager and the calendar that I have to use. But I managing email is a challenge in the best of worlds, and given what I do, it's really a challenge because, as you said, whatever comes into that email inbox is somebody else's plan for my day, and trying to manage that and kind of keep things separated so that I can focus on the things that I think are important. That's an ongoing challenge for somebody in my position.
Looking at, if anyone goes to the site, productivewoman.com, you look at the About page, or the About little sidebar thing, and this is what Laura does. So wrap your head around this, and then tell me that she's not the productive woman. She's a lawyer, a writer, a productivity fanatic, and a tech geek. She's raised 5 amazing kids. You blog occasionally, I think I was just thinking, the Real Estate Law blog, and you're working on your first novel. Okay, so we just talked about boundaries. How are you able to kind of move all of these things forward and be, not just that, but be okay when you don't move them forward as much as you'd like to?
I think the secret is the last thing you just said, learning to be okay when certain things aren't moving as quickly as I'd like them to. For instance, the novel is really important to me, and it's I've got 100,000 some words written and an agent who asked to see it when I finish it. But I have spent a lot of time thinking over the last year in particular about what is most important, and the fact that you can't have multiple priorities. Only really one thing can be a priority at a time. And this is something I talk about on The Productive Woman a lot, is knowing yourself, knowing what really, really matters to you, and focusing your time and attention on those things. And being okay with just taking little baby steps on some things. Right now, my focus is on outside of being with my family, my focus is on 2 things: making sure that my law practice is managed well, and my podcast. And other things take a back seat to that. I'm fortunate because my kids, yes, I've got 5 of them, but my youngest is 21. My older kids are all out of the home and don't need my attention all the time. So I can focus my time and attention on those 2 things that are really, really kind of at the top of the list right now.
When did you start to dive into this stuff? Because, your kids are out of the house now, but when did you kind of recognize, like, okay, look, I have all of these interests, all of these things that I kind of want to, not just dabble in, but give my best effort to. When did you start to realize, okay, I need to come up with some kind of way to do all this, because not doing this stuff is not an option for me?
Well, honestly, I've been kind of a productivity geek or enthusiast, as you like to say, since I was young. Like in high school, I would sit and read productivity books, time management books, whatever was available back there in the dark ages. So it's always been something I've been interested in. And as I married very young, my husband Mike, and I married when we were 18. We had our first child when we were 20. And 4 more after that. And there were all these things I wanted to do. So I knew I had to kind of organize myself. At that time, we didn't talk, at least in my world, didn't talk about productivity so much as organization and time management. And I was always one for lists, and I've always lived and died by my calendar. My family knows if it's not on the calendar, it's not happening.
Right.
So, those kinds of things. So it's been a long, long time, and I've, adapted and developed my thinking on it over the years through influence of people, like lately, Greg McKeown's book on essentialism.
Phenomenal book.
Life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. And, obviously David Allen and people like you and Eric who talk about these things and give me things to think about. I've got my now year calendar here on the wall, and with my 3 words for the year up there. And so
we're working on a new one right now. Or actually, by the time this airs, it should be out, the new version, so the 2016 version. So before we wrap up, I wanted to find out about routines. With all the stuff you've got going on, routine must play a role in your life. How do you have specific routines that you follow either daily or weekly, or do you try to keep that? I know you said your calendar, I know you're the type of person that if it's not scheduled, if it's on the calendar, it's happening. So routines, do you find that they work the same way for you?
Yeah, I think for me, routines are very important. In fact, I just talked about that a little bit on the most recent episode of The Productive Woman as part of one component of making space to be able to think. For me, what routines do, they save me the time of deciding what I'm going to do next. And that saves sort of brain strength or brain power to think about more creative and more important things. And so I have, a sort of loose weekly routine in that I know that I'm going to record a new episode of The Productive Woman on Wednesday. And so on the weekend, I think about what I'm going to talk about because I don't record way out in advance. And I have certain things I do on Monday and Tuesday to prepare for that. And then Thursday is kind of my either a night off, or if I have I'm going to have a guest on the show, often I'll record that then. I have my daily routines. My morning is kind of, I get up in the morning and I, do my things, and I'm hypothyroid, so I take my thyroid pill. And lately, and I don't know if you were one of the ones that I heard talk about this, but somebody intrigued me with the idea of a certain type of meditation app. Maybe it was,
is it Calm?
No, this one it's the one called Headspace.
Shoot. It might have been, I know there's a few people out there that are talking, it might have been the Fizzle guys talk about it. I mean, there's also, what's the other one? There's, I can't think of the other one too. There's the one, Headspace is an app, but there's actually a device that you can use too.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, I'm picturing the guy who talked at
Pat Flynn.
Pat Flynn has talked about that, and I've watched his little video where he kind of demonstrates his day.
Yep.
But I've taken because I'm always going 100 miles an hour, and my mind's always going. One of my weaknesses is that it's difficult for me to just be still and quiet my mind, which you need to do to have any creative thought. And so I've started doing the little Headspace, the little guided meditations, kind of first thing in the morning, and I'm really finding that helpful, surprisingly, when it takes time out of the morning that I could be doing something else. It's actually having a really good impact on the rest of my day. So I have my morning routines, and then I have my evening routine to sort of wind down and, like you, try to sort of shut things off so I can relax and go to sleep. I think routines are really valuable for anybody who wants to accomplish things, to be able to kind of order their life in a way to be able to do that.
Do you journal at all? I know that the interesting thing is when I mention it to, and again, this is probably being very stereotypical, although I have to call it the daily log, because when I say journal or diary to a guy, they're like, really? Come on. But,
and do you wear a pink bow when you do it?
Does it have a lock on it? I'm like, no, it's day
little
one.
Hearts.
Do you log and try to keep track of the stuff that's gone on throughout the day, so that way, or do you just kind of just do a typical or atypical, I guess, because some people don't do it at all, like a review process on a regular basis in some other fashion?
I'm kind of on again, off again on that. It's something I like to do, and I love the Day One app. I have it on all my on all my iThingies on my Mac. And I try to do that. I was doing it in the morning and finding that in the morning I just don't have much to say. And so I know I've heard you talk about that recently and been thinking I need to get more consistent about doing that, because that offload is, to me, it's kind of the same thing as the whole concept of the GTD idea of getting dump. Everything. Yeah, the brain dump. Yep. And I do that pretty well in terms of getting to-dos and things like that out of my mind and into a system. But that brain dump at the end of the day, I think, is a component that I need to get back to more consistently, because it really does help. And I like being able to go back and read those things and see what I was thinking, a year ago or last week.
Yeah, it's one of the things I've been doing. I talked about this on the Fizzle show, is that I actually go back and read on a quarterly basis. I go back and read the journal entries from that whole quarter, and then when the year end comes around, I actually read the whole year of journal. So and they're really short, so it doesn't take long to do. I think a lot of people get resistant to it. It's like, oh, I don't have time. If you have time to post on Facebook, you're journaling. Yeah. So why not just journal for yourself and not give it to the rest of the world? Surely you're as important as the rest of those people out there. Hopefully more so.
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the things when I first got the Day One app, and this was a year and a half, 2 years ago, when it was a while back. And I, until just the last month, I was very consistent about doing it. Things just got kind of crazy. But one of the things I saw in it was this option to the social sharing option. I thought, I was just horrified. I thought the last thing I would ever want is for anybody to read this, not because I'm, plotting somebody's murder or something, but this is a place where I can just, dump whatever goofy things I'm thinking about, very stream of consciousness. I'm not trying to write it well. It's what I'm thinking about at the time, what I did that day, what impact it had on me. And I think it's a really, really valuable exercise, and I miss it when I don't do it.
So after today, you can put in your journal, had a fantastic time on the Productivityist podcast with Mike. We avoided going too stereotypical. We could have gone further down that road, but we nipped it in the bud.
I think we did pretty well. I'm one of those, and I'm a woman of a certain age, so I'm not always. I think I'm pretty sensitive to people's differences, but I'm not necessarily politically correct all the time. I do think there are differences between men and women.
Yep. I can tell you right now, my wife and I, when we talk, there's a reason I just hired an assistant, Melissa, who she's local, and she is really aligned with all the stuff that I'm doing. My wife, I can bounce ideas off of her, but she's like, it's not that she doesn't care. It's just not her area of interest. She has given me some very valuable advice about certain things from an outside perspective, which I appreciate. But she's also the person who puts tasks on the calendar, and it drives me up the wall.
Yeah, that's not what calendars are for.
I know that, but, again, I cannot see. And I think that this might be a stereotype, but you could tell that to your husband. You go, okay, fine. I can tell that to my wife, and I can't tell that to my wife. I'm like, don't put things on the calendar. I just go, okay, well, whatever. I'll just keep, because garbage day for me, it's funny. I've talked about this with her. I use this example all the time. Like, garbage day for me is not an appointment. I don't sit out and go, well, garbage, it's great to see you again. I know it's 6:00 on. I put it out the day before. It's a task. It's in my task app. It goes out the day before. So much so that my neighbors see the garbage go, oh, it must be garbage day tomorrow, because I'm the one that puts it out, right? So it's to each their own. I guess that's the big takeaway here, regardless of where you live, who you are, what gender you are. The key is to make it personal and not just explore the time to find what works. Like, take the time to find it. Don't just take on what other people are using or the hot new tool or whatever. Like, look and say, you know what? Sand glass is one I want to use because my tasks automatically move to the next day, and I like that. Okay, great. Well, then put a system in there that allows you to go to it so that you like going to it as opposed to having it repel you. So I think that those are key elements that a lot of people just don't do, and therefore they just they end up, like we were saying, doing productive instead of being productive.
And that's one of the things that I've seen. There's a joke it's not really a joke. I think there's some truth to it, that no matter what question you ask a lawyer, the answer is always the same. It depends. And that's, it's whether it's about your case or about what you want for dinner. My husband knows this. It drives him crazy. That's pretty much my answer. And that's my answer to people when they say, well, what task manager should I use then? Well, it depends. What do you want to get out of it? And don't just take, I can tell you what I use and why I like it, but it might not work for you.
Yeah, I've used the old saying, I don't know, and then they look at me, but you're supposed to know. I'm like, well, no, I don't know you. I don't know you well enough to know what.
Yeah.
So I kind of pull a Tony Robbins like shocking moment, like, wait a minute, I came to you, you're a strategist, and you say you don't know? I'm like, no, I know a lot about task managers, but I don't know which one would be good for you because, like, are you a paper person or are you a digital person? Do you work with teams or don't you? Because that's going to make OmniFocus, you and I were talking, your very reasons for not using OmniFocus, there are other reasons. Can't have multiple contexts unless you build a perspective. Can't collaborate with others very easily with it. There's lots of reasons why not to use it, but then there are compelling reasons to use it. If you work, there's a gentleman that uses it as his personal task manager because he loves the way it works, and they use Trello for everything else. And what he does is he just grabs the tasks from Trello and puts them into OmniFocus. That he creates some redundancy there, but that's what works. So I think that's the key, is just not only to take the time to figure out what works and then foster and nurture that so it becomes that second nature, that pillar that you need, so that you can really, as we said, get the right things done and truly be productive.
Absolutely.
Laura, where can people find you when you and I are not talking about the bourbon that you have that you're going to give to me?
I'm saving it for you.
And I don't know when I'll be in Texas next time, so we'll have to try to figure that. I might go to Austin, and I like San Antonio too. Dallas, Fort Worth, it's not. I loved going to Fort Worth, but the one thing that surprised me is that Saturday morning at Podcast Movement, we tried to find a breakfast spot downtown, and nothing was open.
Yeah, they roll up the sidewalks.
It's like after Friday, it's like, okay. Saturday night was hopping, but Friday is like Saturday morning, the subway wasn't open. I'm like, what is going on here? But anyways, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, they can always find me at theproductivewoman.com. That's the website for the podcast. I'm on Twitter as Laura McMom, and I'm not as I'm there. I keep an eye on things and love connecting with people. But the rest of my contact places, I guess, they'd find on the website.
Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
I had such a great time talking with Laura. It's so refreshing to be able to talk to somebody, that we can just talk about productivity and different strategies and approaches and our thoughts on it, and not ask about, a particular product or book or whatever. It's not that I don't enjoy doing those interviews as well, but this is a bit of a change of pace, and I had a great time chatting with her. Some of the stuff that you didn't get to hear us talk about are things like, how she sets boundaries, and things like the idea of just some other ideas. We went on for about, 8 minutes on another aspect where we just started talking about like how yearly planning goes and stuff like that, and how to think bigger as opposed to the day-to-day, and how that might incorporate with, what I'm looking at with the Now Your method and stuff like that. So if you want to hear that, then what you want to do is become a Patreon supporter. So go to patreon.com/productivityist and contribute any amount from the $1 amount all the way up to the $100 amount, which puts you into the super supporter range. There's a variety of perks that you would get, including anything from some of the courses that I offer, to a shout out on the show, to a 20-minute coaching session, to a 3 times a year Productivityist pack mailed right to you wherever you are, to a t-shirt, to a whole bunch of different stuff. So check out patreon.com/productivityist if you want to become a supporter and get the additional content for this weekly episode of the podcast, which is it's the same podcast, just with more content, as well as 2 additional episodes per week that are more personal, that are shorter, that kind of touch on stuff which generally just me talking to you about different aspects of productivity and other things, time management, task management, email management, all calendar management, all that stuff, even some tools and some reviews from time to time. If you're not able to support in a monetary sense, that's fine. Ratings and reviews in iTunes are always helpful. It helps people find out where I am, what I'm doing, and what we are doing with this show, with my producer, John Polster, and of course, the help I'm getting from other members of the Productivityist team. Until next week, I hope I'll see you again. I hope you'll hear my dulcet tones again. Canadian dulcet tones, that is, eh? Until then, I would love it if you'd stop guessing. I'd love it even more if you'd start going, rather. And just keep moving things forward, okay? As you can tell, I had a great time doing this episode, so I'm feeling very gregarious, and I hope you go forward and do some great things with the rest of your day and the rest of your week. We'll see you next week.